ask the questions.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment that we want to thank you because we think that your Barcelona Institute is really one of the premier worldwide training programs in REBT. You have a very wide program, very high quality, you have a wide variety of presenters. We want to congratulate you on a job well done. Well, I would say one of the things that makes it unique is that it anticipated some of the work done by Daniel Kahneman in his groundbreaking modern work, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Ellis always said that human beings had the potential to have both irrational and rational thoughts, which define how Kahneman described the human mind as both having system 1 and system 2, an irrational, quick way of thinking followed by a more rational way that could overcome it. So that in many ways, REBT anticipated the work done by Kahneman and Tversky that had been validated by their Nobel Prize. Second, I think that Al's greatest contribution has been in the work of discomfort, anxiety, and low frustration tolerance, and secondary disturbance. His ideas got us to think about the fact that human beings can have irrational beliefs and emotional disturbance to their internal sensations, and that when they think they can't stand their emotions, they engage in destructive behaviors to escape their emotions, and that they worsen their emotions. This insight really has become one of the central features of many other approaches to cognitive behavior therapy that see people's attempt to escape their emotions and not tolerate them as one of the primary notions of disturbance.
I would add to that in my perspective, Al's greatest contribution from an REBT perspective to modern psychology is the concept of the elegant solution. I think that most of our clients and most of us, late at night, we have our 2 o'clock in the morning thoughts of the worst thing that could happen. We're there already in our minds. And I think many psychotherapists, because of their own discomfort, don't want to talk about that with their clients. And I think Al was genius about teaching this to his students, his trainees, and his clients, that it is actually much more elegant to face the worst case scenario. If it happens, you've learned to cope. If not, you've generalized to other activating events. Hands down, the best thing he did.
I think that's really clear for me is that the idea of self-acceptance about making mistakes was really the thing that I learned the most from Al. When I was a fellow at the Institute, I had terrible public speaking anxiety. I didn't want to take any risks, and I really sought safety, you know. And he taught me that it was okay to fail, it was okay to make mistakes, and there was no growth without failure. And personally, I've used that insight from him more than anything else in my professional and personal life.
So Ray's primary irrational belief was self-depreciation.
Right.
Mine was catastrophizing. Al really taught me and helped me to decatastrophize. I, especially in graduate school, definitely needed a pen, and subsequently throughout my life with some pretty horrific situations that have occurred, that philosophy has really helped me. I take it day by day. I'm not always perfect at it, but decatastrophizing has been personally the most valuable.
On a professional level, you know, I used to co-lead a group with Al, and the group would meet with Al and all the patients, and then I would meet with the group members alone for 45 minutes to go over behavioral homework assignments. And I always used to ask the patients, why they liked therapy with Al. Some of them were very dedicated. And Al communicated to his patients an unconditional positive acceptance, similar to what Carl Rogers identified. But he did it by being very active and directive. And so some people can be supportive and accepting, and some people can be active. Al taught me how to merge those, to be both. And I remember his clients say, I know he's tried so hard to help me, and I can tell in his voice that he thinks about how I'm going to help him, how he's going to help me, and how he accepts me. So I learned how to be active and accepting at the same time to be a more efficient therapist.
I would say professionally from Al, I really watched him mentor future REBTers, including myself. And I, much like what Ray was saying about his unconditional acceptance of other people, he had that of his trainees as well. I think a lot of people were always scared going into him for supervision when you found out that he was your supervisor. And he was actually probably the most accepting supervisor that we've had, or that I ever had. And I think I try and model myself, after him with that accepting others, their mistakes, helping them along the way, and helping them to grow.
Sal would say, that's what you get for being a mere mortal.
That's right.
With the finger. I don't think the theory could have been formulated better. I think the theory is pretty unique. But I would say two things. I think the choice of the word rational was not a good marketing decision. Because I think in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, psychotherapy was very feely and touchy, and rational was considered too much of an extremely different perspective. And Al changed the term from rational psychotherapy to rational emotive psychotherapy because he realized that he left out the importance of emotions in the theory. So I think that rational was not a good terminology. I also think that the ABC model that we have for clients is a little simplistic, and that we attempted to change that in the Practitioner's Guide to REBT, 3rd edition. That some things that are thoughts, like maybe the audience won't like me, is really we put in the A column because it's an inference that we make. So some thoughts we in REBT consider possible events, even though they're hypothesized to occur. They haven't really occurred, and we don't put them as B's, right? We reserve the B column for the irrational beliefs. And I think that that distinction still confuses people, because as soon as someone says a negative automatic thought, they put it in the B column and go to challenge it rather than put it in the A column. So we often have to change that idea.
And sort of dovetailing off of what Ray said, I think that something not negative, but a disadvantage comes from an advantage. So we have trained so many people in REBT since its inception, and I think one of the things that we could do better, I don't have a solution necessarily, is that all the people that we've trained to be current with how we've modified the theory. There are people that have been trained many, many years ago that are practicing REBT in one way, and we've made some modifications that are flexible. But I do think that it can be confusing to people out there that are learning it, or even to clients that know something about it. They read one thing, they hear something else. So I think that we need to do a better job at dissemination with a clearer picture, with room for modifications along the way.
I think we struggle with this and we have some disagreement amongst many of us, sometimes I'm happy that a lot of Al's ideas, such as secondary disturbance and discomfort anxiety, get accepted by other cognitive behavior therapies, even though they don't give him credit for seeing it first. And I say, well, we don't have to have the fight about who saw it first. I'm just happy that they get the idea. And so that's good. And sometimes I think that we're always going to be a minority group because we're more philosophical than most other forms of CBT. That we struggle between wanting to be a philosophical approach to therapy and an empirically supported treatment. So in some ways, we're closer to cognitive therapy that wants a strong empirical foundation, and in some ways, we're close to existential and logotherapy that want to be built on firm philosophical foundations. And we're kind of in between and keep bouncing back and forth between those two things. We're always going to be a little unique in having that combination and being more philosophical than mainstream cognitive behavior therapy.
I would agree that that we would probably be considered a minority in the broader picture. I think over the last couple of years that seems to be shifting a bit. In terms of where we're headed, I think we need the help of all of you. We need the help of all of the people that we've trained that are running centers to be present in the broader community so that REBT's presence is there. I think that's one of our biggest weaknesses that we are working on correcting. There has been some progress, but we can't do it alone.
I think there's a couple of things that have been really important recently. As I said, we kind of bounced back and forth between being a philosophical therapy and an empirically supported psychotherapy. Recently, Dan David and his group in Cluj, Romania, by Babeș Bolyai University, have done 3 really significant meta-analyses, maybe 4. One showing that irrational beliefs are very much associated with emotional distress and disturbance. Another meta-analysis shows that rational beliefs are inversely related to emotional disturbance. A third meta-analysis shows that irrational beliefs are firmly related to the type of cognitions that are talked about in other forms of cognitive therapy. And a fourth meta-analysis has really shown that REBT has a good effect size and really makes people better. So in the last 2 years, we've probably had published 4 strong meta-analyses that establish the validity of REBT scientifically. I think that's kind of important. For me, I think that there's 3 areas that we really need to improve upon. The first is we don't have a well-established measure of irrational and rational thinking. We have a number of them. There's one that I've developed, and I'm kind of unhappy with it for 2 reasons. Number one, it's too long, and we need to develop a shorter form. Number 2, we don't have enough items or subscales to identify other condemnation. So our scales are very good at predicting internalized disturbance such as anxiety and depression and withdrawal. We haven't really developed good research to predict anger, aggression, exploitation, those irrational beliefs. So we need to refine the measure to make it briefer, and we need to be able to show the irrational beliefs that measure these other externalizing disturbances. Finally, I think we haven't really demonstrated whether people get better because we challenge and reduce their endorsement of irrational beliefs, or we rehearse and practice their endorsement of rational beliefs. So why do we get better? Less irrational thinking or more rational thinking? And before we address that problem, we really need to resolve the measurement problem so we can have a good measure that we can give clients repeatedly across therapy to see whether irrational beliefs go down or rational beliefs goes up or both. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing.
And also what we talked about over lunch the other day,
Okay.
the expansion of the
Right.
disputations.
Yes. Yeah, we've sort of expanded the number of disputations that we want people to teach. And how can we do that in the new edition? And we're already writing the new edition of the practitioner's
Right
guide.
here, on the Ramblas.
On the Ramblas the other night, we're trying to show a better way to teach disputing.
We figured it out, now we just have to do it.
And I think that the other thing we want therapists to do is to practice writing down the challenges to the client's irrational beliefs before they get into the session, so that they get practice formulating the questions and being able to deliver them more smoothly. So that's a training goal that we want to
Yes.
provide. Okay. I think that's really easy to answer the question. I think, as I said, we are different and unique in that we're more philosophical. That to be a good REBT therapist, you don't just master psychology and conditioning theory and behavioral homework assignments, but the philosophical works that go back to the Buddha and Seneca and all those Stoic philosophers that give life meaning and help you deal with the hard aspects of life. So that's one thing that you'll learn. The other thing that we have always heard from people that come to our training is that it's one of the richest trainings because we don't make much money on it, because we're making people practice REBT with each other and giving them direct feedback. Most people go to training and they can listen to lectures, listen to workshops, ask questions, watch demonstrations, but they don't have to do it. And in our training, you have to come and take the risk of doing it and getting feedback right away. And I think that makes our training unique.
Right, and I would just add to that, I think it is we're clearly biased. We've both been trained in REBT and we haven't left yet, so I think sort of coming full circle to what we started with about how Al influenced us personally and professionally. I think that with all of our supervisors and trainers, I think we exercise that with our students that we train. So when they are getting that feedback, that immediate feedback and supervision and the peer counseling, it's very accepting. It's constructive, but there's an accepting environment. And definitely would agree with Ray that it's a lot more than just simple lectures. The learning takes place in those peer groups. And relationships form. Relationships form for life from those peer counseling groups.
And I would say, having just come from the supervisor training practicum that we did in New York, our supervisors who are approved have to demonstrate that they do therapy and have people watch them do therapy to show that they are accepting and offer positive suggestions. So like our training for therapists, that you have to do it and people have to watch you do it, our supervisors have to do it and have people watch them do it. So there's a little bit of quality control that you're getting in accepting positive supervisor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Y gracias a todos.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.